Let's just make our way onto our spine. And we'll settle in for a little fluidity in our breath. Knees can be bent, legs can be extended, bottoms of the feet can be together. Anything that feels appropriate to center into. Well, there's this cloud that is pressing up into this mountain range. And as the wind pushes this cloud into the mountains, the cloud has no choice but to get lighter. As you're breathing here, feel the center of your sternum rise and fall with each cycle of respiration. Think about the maximum amount of movement possible as you inhale and expand and exhale and contract. Give ourselves just about 20 more seconds here just to feel the cycles of respiration physically manifesting in the center of the chest. And then if your knees aren't in a bent position, let's bring them into a bent position. Feet come flat against the mat or floor. And we'll extend the right leg down the mat, right toes pointing towards the ceiling or sky. Inhale and contract that left thigh towards the torso. Hands could come to the shin or hamstring. Just a little compression into the left side of the body, into that left anterior hip crease. As you get that contraction, check back in with the expansion and contraction of the sternum, and check back in with the fluidity of the respiration. And then we'll release the left leg so that it mirrors the right. And think about the hip girdle and getting a neutral, balanced awareness across the entirety of the hip girdle. And then let's inhale and bring that right thigh in towards the torso. Get that right anterior hip crease compression. As you create this compression, once again, think about the expansion and the contraction of the sternum as you respirate. Feel into that space of expansion and that space of contraction. And then when you feel balance left to right with no rush to make that true, let's release the right leg so that it mirrors the left. And once again, think about neutrality across the hip girdle. so that we're just at ease here. And then from this balance, let's one more time pull our left thigh in towards the torso. This time we're going to want to have our hands as close to the knee as is possible. So that can still be at the hamstring. You're just pulling into that knee crease or that knee pit. And then we're going to start to do some circular movement. So using the hands to move the distal femoral head in a circular motion. And thinking about how moving the distal head impacts the location of the proximal head. So think about how the femur itself is moving through the entirety of the hip bowl, hip socket, ilium space. And really think about exploring at that proximal head inside the hip socket. Even as we're moving and controlling at this distal head, think about what's going on inside the hip capsule itself. And your circle here can be as expansive or constricted as feels beneficial, as feels impactful. And then we're going to reverse the direction of our circular movement. As we reverse, we're likely going in the direction that our body is less accustomed to moving. Right? We likely pre-selected or autonomously selected the direction we're most comfortable with. So this may feel out of sync. You may be bumping into nerve sensations that feel different, that feel new, or it may just feel like a disjointed movement. Maybe you have great mobility in both directions and both circles feel perfect. Just note or experience the sensations you're having. And then when you feel balanced, circular direction to circular direction, let's release our left leg so that it mirrors the right. And once again, thinking about sitting neutral across the hips and on our spine. And then we'll do this to the second side. So right thigh comes in towards the torso, hands towards the knee. And we just start to create a circular direction and just move and explore the femur inside the hip capsule. So in order for this cloud to get lighter, it has to, in order for the cloud to get over this mountain range, it has to get lighter. In order for this cloud to get lighter, it has to release some of its contents. And so the wind starts to kind of shake through the water molecules in this cloud. And they start to form into droplets. And then they start to drop one after another after another. When it feels appropriate for you, let's reverse our direction. Big circles or constricted circles, but a circular movement that allows for exploration of the hip capsule. This is one particular water drop. And it calls out. It says, I'm not ready to drop. And the wind kind of playfully whispers back, no one ever is. And with that, the wind pushes the cloud more intensely against this mountain range. And that water drop falls from the cloud and starts getting closer and closer to Earth. When you feel balanced in both circular directions, let's release our right leg to mirror the left. And we'll just sit here for a moment, feeling balance across the hip girdle. Tweak and adjust so that you are level, balanced, and even. Note how the sacrum is sitting here, and think about the sacrum being rooted and connected to the mat as you inhale and bend the knees. Let's push down into the feet and just lift our belt line maybe 2 to 4 inches so that we get into just the babyest little bridge, just so that we have a little activation across the sacral joint. And then we'll release the tailbone back down to the mat. And let the knees fall to one side or the other, whatever side feels most impactful for you. We'll do the worst thing we can do in a restorative class and press ourselves up into a seat. From the seated space, let's let the bottoms of the feet come together. And as the feet come together, just clasp the hands over the toe mounds. And let the chin fall down to the sternum. And then just relax here. Broaden out across the collarbone with that relaxation. And try to soften the restriction at the base of the throat. So that you're just breathing through as easy a space as is possible through that windpipe space. Just really thinking about ease here. And then let's lift our head back to neutral. Keep that hand clamp if it's accessible. If not, slide up the legs until you get to a point where you feel like you can get your torso vertical and the thoracic spine vertical into that cervical spine lift. And try to feel the softness of the breath flow. Like we're creating a physical alignment that just creates more ease for our breath. And then think about moving the pelvis slightly forward so that there's a shift in the hip space we've created. Pelvis goes forward, and see if that allows for the crown of the head to get a little bit higher. Give ourselves just 15 more seconds just to feel this respiration with full length in the torso, from the lumbar to the cervical spine expansiveness. And then when it feels appropriate for you, let's extend our legs straight out in front of us for a little staff. And as the legs extend out, we're just going to follow them into a forward fold. Think about feeling that anterior hip crease pull back as you release forward. Remember, the knees can bend as much as is requested by your body. We'll give ourselves just about 30 more seconds here. And then when it feels appropriate for you, let's bring ourselves back into staff. And from staff, we're going to grab a blanket or towel. And we'll take that from a shelf fold to a hot dog fold to a block-like fold. So we end up with something similar to a block. And we're going to place that roughly in line with the right knee on the left side. And we'll bend our left knee out towards a half butterfly. You have right leg extended down the mat. You have left leg in that open space. And the left ankle is both supported and elevated. Now let's grab our other blanket and we'll do the same fold. So shelf fold, hot dog fold, block fold. So we have the possibility of using this second block. And then we're going to release ourselves onto our spine, keeping the ankles supported and elevated. And we're looking to exaggerate our capacity for external rotation. Now, having the ankle elevated will do that. If you feel like your hip has extra space, you can work the ankle out towards the lateral edge, the outer edge of that block prop, and offer a little more release capacity. If it feels like it's too much, you can take that second blocker blanket and place that underneath the thigh for a little support. So little supported half butterfly here, elevated half butterfly with the option for support. It's probably a better way to describe that. Right ankle is staying integrated and right foot is pointed towards the ceiling or sky so that we're still active on that right side while we're getting more and more passive, more and more relaxed on the left side. So at first, as this drop starts to fall towards the earth. It's terrified. And then it starts to experience the freedom, the joy of sailing through the air, the beauty of the horizon, the beauty of this jungle beneath it. It's getting closer and closer to the canopy of the jungle. The little reminder on this bilateral expansion is you get here and you get set, and the left leg becomes more and more relaxed, and the abductor musculature becomes more and more involved and expanded. The feeling of ease may shift. And so if that happens, you have two choices, right? You could move the left ankle closer to the right thigh. That's going to provide more stability on that outer edge of the shin. Or you could tuck that other blanket underneath the thigh. Just keep those things in mind as and if the sensation on the left hip begins to change. At the same time, think back to that breath that we started practice with, this center sternum expansion and contraction. Think about that as a balancing and anchoring breath cycle that can bring your torso more and more back to balance and ease here. We don't want to twist in the thoracic spine. We want to be level across the shoulder girdle, level across the thoracic joint, balanced at the weight distribution on the scapula. So this drop is getting closer and closer to the canopy. Till eventually it lands on this giant eucalyptus. And for a moment, everything just stands still. The wind pauses. The leaves of the canopy seem to be perfectly still, static. And then in the next moment, the wind rushes through and the leaves of the eucalyptus shake. And the drop, before it can even really catch its breath, it's looking out at this horizon of canopy. It slips down the length of the eucalyptus leaf and it starts falling deeper into this jungle. We'll give ourselves 60 more seconds here on this first side. It's falling, it's seeing these, it's kind of whizzing by these vines branching in every direction. And these taller trees. And then all of a sudden it stops abruptly, perfectly, and everything's static again. And now it's resting underneath this jungle canopy in the middle of this huge leaf of a plantain. On the leaf must be 8 feet long, maybe 18 inches wide. And this drop of water is just perfectly sitting at the apex of this leaf bend. When it feels appropriate for you, we're going to take that prop out from underneath our left leg and bend the right knee so that both the right and left knees can point towards the ceiling or sky. We just settle back into balance. Feel into any asymmetry in the right and left hip, in the way that the sacrum is sitting, and the way that the hips are sitting. And then when it feels appropriate, we're going to take our prop or our props over to the second side. Let that right ankle find its support as the right knee falls out wide. And then allow your left leg to extend down the mat. Allow for bilateral imbalance here. The right leg may be more open or more restricted than the left. And so think about that ankle placement on your prop in relation to what will be most beneficial for the right side, not what is comparable to the left, but what is most impactful here on side 2. Make sure that your left leg stays integrated, that there's activity in the left side as the right side becomes more and more relaxed. And then we settle into this little elevated, potentially supported half butterfly. So is this drop of water looks around from this plantain leaf. It sees now the undergrowth of the jungle, the vividness, the sharpness, the aliveness. And in the reflection of another water drop, it sees itself. Remember that the central balancing component of this shape is our respiration cycle of rise and fall of the middle of the sternum, and that we're ensuring that we do not have any rotation to our thoracic spine, that we're level and balanced and at ease across the shoulder girdle. And so this water droplet in its own reflection is mesmerized by how shiny it is, how beautiful it is. It starts to think of itself as this like crowning jewel to the entirety of the jungle. And as it sits on the apex of this huge plantain leaf, the apex of the curve, this huge plantain leaf, it looks like a crowning jewel. The light is reflecting and it's sparkling off. And the leaf that it sits upon is perfectly static within this world of dynamicism. And so it just beams with pride and joy as it listens to other raindrops trickle through the canopy down to the forest floor. Remember that if the sensation changes in that hip capsule, that you have the ability to move your ankle in towards the medial line, towards the left thigh. You have the ability to take that second prop and slide that underneath the thigh for more support. And we'll give ourselves just about 60 more seconds here on side two. When it feels appropriate for you, we'll bring both knees to a bent position, feet flat on the ground. Let the hip girdle relax to neutral. Let's take our block-like prop, push down into the toe mounds and heels, lift the belt line, and slide that underneath the sacrum for a support. The primary concern of using a soft prop like this is that the left or right side can have different densities. So try to go with both sides having equal impact on or be equal connection to fold. So either have the fold away from you towards your feet or fold towards you towards your head. And that way, both sides of the prop should have an equivalent density. And then we're just going to release here for a moment. Try to relax the middle of the lumbar spine so that you start to feel the prop making more and more impact. Give ourselves about 50 more seconds here. Just releasing into this little supported bridge. Now, really thinking about staying engaged with the prop at the sacrum. We're going to pull the thighs in towards the torso. And so the amount of travel that the thighs are able to do is really dependent on how anchored you are in the prop. We don't want to pull away. We're trying to allow for the spine to be able to fully receive this flexion of the lumbar. And as the lumbar's in flexion from this elevated sacral position, Then the thoracic spine goes into neutrality. Try to experience the length that you can create from the flexion upward to the head, expanding into the space behind you. Feel that respiration in the center of the sternum as you rise and fall, the expansion and contraction. Then we'll release our feet back down to the mat. You want to make sure that you are anchored and balanced here at the sacrum. Let our bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. Now, elevated sacrum into this Baddha Sukhasana, supine butterfly. This can be pretty intense, um, or really hyperextending or hypercapacitating the external rotation. We were not going to be here long, but really think about trying to relax the entirety of the nervous system by slowing down your respiration so that the pelvis can be at ease as the hips externally rotate. Just give ourselves just 30 more seconds here. And when it feels appropriate for you, let's bring our knees back to neutral. Push down into the toe mounds and heels, and we'll lift the belt line high enough to slide that prop out from underneath us. Spine comes down to the mat. Maybe you press into the thighs so that you can lengthen out the entirety of the spine. And then arms just release to cactus or T. And we're going to rock the knees a little side to side. A little exploration of our lumbar rotation here. Feeling, searching, exploring space we've created. Next time that the knees fall over to the left, let's let them stay there. It's almost as this, almost the moment that this drop of water starts to feel comfortable. The wind whips through the undergrowth of this jungle. And the plantain leaf that this drop is on starts to sway and droop. On the water droplet starts to run down the length of the leaf, where it connects onto a smaller plantain plant. And it runs down the length of that leaf. And it hovers out over this. The leaf itself dangles out over this river. And the water droplet gets to the end of the leaf. And it's hanging on to this leaf, just using all of its tension to hold on. Last 20 seconds here on this first side. We'll bring ourselves back to neutral. And we'll release over to the second side. And so this droplet is doing everything it can to hold on. It's looking down and it's seeing this river rushing beneath it. But its weight is getting heavier, heavier, and it's losing more and more of its grip. Last 30 seconds on this second side. When it feels appropriate for you, we'll bring our knees back to neutral. On this neutrality, we'll just ask ourselves if there's anything that we might want, that we might need, that we might benefit from prior to Shavasana. And if there is, let's offer that to ourselves now. If we have everything we need, if we have everything we want, if we're ready to appreciate some stillness, let's just release ourselves into a shape where we can appreciate that. Eventually, the work of gravity becomes too much, and this drop loses its grip on the leaf and falls down into the river below. Disappears with a very subtle splash. Just becoming fully at ease here. So the drop of water that just moments before was looking around and thinking of itself as the crown jewel of the entire jungle now looks around as it's rushed down this river and it can't see itself, it can't distinguish itself. And it screams out, I'm lost. And the entirety of the river calls back. We'll start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes, to our wrists, our ankles, elbows, and knees, shoulders. Let the hips move, explore all that space we've created. Let the entirety of the spine move, the head, the jaw, the tongue, the eyes. Eventually, the entirety of the body moves, and we'll utilize that movement to transition our way into a seat. And in this seated space, let your spine get tall. Refine the fluidity of your breath. Until the entirety of the river calls back and says, you aren't lost, you're home. Our next inhale, we'll bring our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that while nature has made you a single note, the song of life is sung by the whole? And see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste.